Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Music Rating, Ranking, and Reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review any artist discographies, songs, musical topics, really whatever comes to mind. This episode is equally one of my most anticipated and most dreaded. This was voted on in a poll of really just bullshit that I really like in my server. It was The National, it was The Cardigans, The National, The Cardigans, Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos. There was 5 options. I'm blanking on one of them now. Probably something really important to me. Oh no, it was the Crane Wives. And then the one that did win, my beloved and favorite artist at this current time, Aimee Mann, of course, former frontwoman of the new wave synth pop band Till Tuesday, leading into an alternative rock, chamber pop, indie folk sort of singer-songwriter style. And yeah, may I let the cat out of the bag there. This is my favorite artist of at least my current period in time. I absolutely adore her. She is one of the few artists that truly connects to me on a sort of deeper level in terms of her songwriting and just the overall performances. I'm going to gush once or twice. I have slight positives to say about most of these, so it'll be fun to see how that works out. That being said, I am not alone because it would be very dull if I was alone. So above me is Zach to break all of my hopes and dreams and express to me how incorrect I
am. So that's not what I'm going to do. Probably I'm,
correct.
Again, I didn't really listen to any Aimee Mann until we played her in a listening party, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and it was enough for me to listen to all of these. And yeah, you don't hear much about Aimee Mann, but I think she was a really interesting artist to dive into, and yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff to talk about.
I do feel like this may not be the best approach. As much as I love her, a lot of the time her material is somewhat samey, especially within her peak era. It's pretty similar. However, I don't give a shit. I love it, so it is what it is. We're counting 9 records here. We're not including One Drifter in the Snow because it's a Christmas album, and who the hell cares? I think I haven't even listened to it. I think Zach said it would pretty obviously be his bottom anyway, so it doesn't really matter, right?
I did not think it was very good.
Okay. Well, good thing that we don't have to discuss that. That being said, I'm going to end this because I think regardless of how much Zach likes her, I'm evidently the bigger fan here. There's a solid case that I like probably all of these albums more than Zach does.
How many people in the world would say Aimee Mann is their favorite artist?
Me.
Probably,
I think like 10 other people know her. So
it's probably about that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of fans out there. That being said, Zach is going to start things out with his number 9. Which of my babies are you putting at the bottom of the basket?
This is going to sting the most because first of all, it's the very bottom of the list. And second of all, it's probably not even close to your bottom. So we'll see how this goes. My number 9 is Mental Illness. And I still like it. It's a low 3.5. I think it's good. It's a good album. And what do I really say? This is a transition to like a folkier sound, but she's still kind of doing similar things to what she did before. She's talking about her relationships and mental health, and she just has a songcraft across all of her albums that makes me kind of like everything, because there's just something about the way that she writes that's inherently interesting, and you hear that on this album too. Starts out with Goose Snow Cone, cool song, deals with, admitting to something you can't admit to. Stuck in the Past is moving. Patient Zero is pretty catchy, and almost kind of has that like BoJack Horseman-y vibe. My favorite song is actually the very last song on the album, What is that song called? Gotta look it up. Poor Judge. See, I had listened to this whole album, and I just thought that I kind of had heard it all, and there was one more like short track, so I was like, okay, this can't change my mind about anything. I was wrong. That track is amazing. It is beautiful. It is regal. Lovely, lovely. That said, it's the folkier style, and it feels a little plain. I, I'm a fan of artists like Elliott Smith and Bon Iver, stuff like that, and just compared to that, this feels just a little bit kind of like run of the mill. And I'm not saying that about her songwriting, but for me, the like soundscape and everything is just a little bit. It's okay. And I felt like there were a few songs here that just felt a little cliche, cheesy. None of them were quite so much, but it just overall, because I tend to lean towards things that are a little bit more edgy, maybe this didn't connect with me as much. But I'm sure I'm wrong about it, and I can't wait for you to correct me later in this video. Probably not immediately.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about that one for a while. As well, just want to point out a mutual of ours, Steph, also has it at 5 stars, so love you, girl. Anyways, yeah, not going to talk about that one for a fat minute here. At my bottom, this was actually not at all what I was expecting, because there was one album of hers that I wasn't crazy about before doing this. I've corrected myself. I now greatly enjoy all of her catalog. So at the bottom for me, I'm actually going with her sophomore release, I'm With Stupid. I think that this one was really enjoyable. It's hard to deny, though, I think that there's a pretty clear drop off in quality in comparison to whatever. As much as I love whatever, I can admit it's a very standard, a very sort of generic jangle pop alt rock sound with some great flourishes of playing across it. I just feel like there's fewer highlights within the playing across this album. And while the songs are still great, the highs just simply don't match it. My favorites being Choice on the Matter, Sugar Coated, Super Bowl, Par for the Course, and Ray. You will expect me to be bringing up many, many songs throughout this episode. I will say that for each record. And despite my liking of it, the 7.5 minute closer, It's Not Safe, just doesn't justify that amount of length. I'm still at a low 4 stars though. I love her. I love her music. So I think pretty much every single one of these albums are at least very good. It just sort of lacks the career highlights that I feel like the majority of her other releases have. So at number 9, I'm with Stupid at 4 stars.
Yep. That is my number 8. And I agree with a lot of what you say. I considered putting it at my bottom, but I think when I first heard this album, right after whatever, that first run of tracks is so good, especially if you're into the like 90s rock music kind of thing. It has a really cool alt rock sound, and so I thought I was going to like this one better than the debut, and yeah, it doesn't quite keep it up all the way across. It ends up being a little overlong, and so it's probably the least, like, even compared to Mental Illness is a little bit more cohesive for me. But I feel like the highlights on here kind of just elevated slightly over that one. Long Shot, the opening track, is just so cool. Love the harmonies. Choice in the Matter has a little bit more of like the distorted guitar. Sugar Coated is also just a very cool like 90s banger. You Can Make a Killing is a little slower. Super Bowl is fun. I think it's around like Amateur and All Over Now that I get a little bit like things just kind of feel a little bit more fillery. It kind of gets on course again with Par for the Course, which is cool. You're with Stupid Now. It's kind of pretty. But yeah, I don't know if I enjoyed the ending quite as the track Ray is all right, but Frankenstein, Ray, It's Not Safe. None of those are big favorites of mine. These early albums, it just feels a little bit more like of a commercialized sound. She hadn't switched to like her own record label yet, and as a result, I think the sound is very generic. I still think the songwriting can be pretty good at times, but mostly I think this album kind of blends in with others of the era. Even though I still think it's a fairly good example of that. But you feel more of her personality on other albums. So number 8, I'm with Stupid.
Yeah, I still, like I was saying, obviously I like it a bit more than you, but I get it. I do think it's definitely one of her least artistic statements, which is probably why it falls to the bottom, because I think that she's filled with those. Now, next up from me, I'm not sure how this record plays for you because you seem to react an interesting way whenever I brought it up before. Number 8, I'm going to have Queens of the Summer Hotel. This was the one that I wasn't crazy about my first time through. I am up at 4 stars though. It's the record of hers that definitely grew the most for me on a re-listen, and I think it's definitely a really nice change from Mental Illness, which is definitely her darkest record, I would say. This one's still the sort of beautiful one-when instrumentation, as well as having almost a slightly loungy, like jazz feeling to it, to me. And despite being over 30 years into her career at this point, she's still creating some of the most beautiful and stunning songs out there, having incredible melodies across them. You Fall, You Don't Have the Room, Suicide is Murder, and I See You are all just utterly fantastic songs. I do feel like there is a slight lull earlier on in the track listing with some songs that I'm not personally as crazy about. And I do think that this one being sort of chopped up with a couple of shorter songs is definitely what drops it for me. I mean, it's, I believe, 17 tracks, and you could definitely just expand out some of the better ones and just get a more cohesive listening experience, I would say. But on the whole, it's still a very strong release and really just only follows the slow due to being in this strong of a catalog for me. So 4 stars for Queens of the Summer Hotel. Great.
Yep, it's still an interesting take on that one. But my number 7 is going to be Charmer, and I like this album. I think it has a great, first run of tracks. Sounding familiar at all? But this is later in her career. This is when she established a little bit more independence, and I also think her writing style kind of comes through a little bit more here. The opener, Charmer, is just a ton of fun. It makes you smile ear to ear. I love the synth sound that was kind of pioneered on the previous album, and it continues here, and I like to hear that. Disappeared, I think, is a really cool song. It reminds me a little bit of State of Grace from Taylor Swift. It just has the similar guitar sound. So it's a pretty good first run of tracks. Labrador, I'm not as crazy about lyrically, just because of the like saying that you're faithful like a dog or whatever. I don't quite go for that, but I thought it was musically good. Crazy Town is fun. So I think there's a lot of good songs on here. I don't know why it's just maybe not quite as much like my kind of album. It feels a little bit more in the vein of like a Summer Teeth maybe. Or I also thought of what else did I think of? I can't remember at the moment, but yeah, it's all fairly like indie pop. It has the Shins on it, and that one song, Living a Lie. James Mercer does a duet. I'm not super into his voice and hers at the same song. Maybe you can explain to me later in the video. The track following that one is Slip and Roll, and I think that's a great song. It would fit really well on The Forgotten Arm, both lyrically and musically, I think. So it almost feels like they could add that to the musical version if they ever decide to ship that one around. Last set of songs here, I think especially Red Flag Diver doesn't really do it for me. The last song, Barfly is cool. Gumby and Gamma Ray, especially Gumby, I think it's okay. So yeah, this is just an era where I think all the songs are very strong, and if you're into this style, you're gonna really like this album. They do sound, a lot of them, somewhat similar, and but it keeps up a good pace, and I think it's a very good album. So strong 3.5 for that one.
Okay, fair. That is my number 7 as well, Charmer. But this is one that grew a lot on me. I'm at 4.5 already. I quite enjoy Aimee, Mann. So I think this is a clear step off of what she was doing on fucking Smilers. adding in a bit more synth and a bit of nuance to the arrangements with a bit of like horns and whatnot. I didn't really think of it, but yeah, definitely Summer Teeth, kind of like Portomaro by the Shins, indie pop styles on this. You can definitely feel. It feels like she's pulling a bit from her earlier new wave days though on here, and I really love it, which is something that I definitely think sticks out because you brought it up before, and I'll sort of mention him now. She was pretty well inspired by Elvis Costello, and you can definitely feel that within her type of songwriting. And she writes from that sort of new wave perspective a lot of the time. And I love how it blends in with the sort of alt rock and chamber pop that she would later go on to do. And I think that it's really excellent. And this is kind of her going full circle back to like the Till Tuesday era. And I think that it works out brilliantly in the combination with her modern day style. As you mentioned him, James Mercer is on here from the Shins on Living a Lie, and I absolutely love it. I think James Mercer is a brilliant vocalist as well, and I think that they just complement each other very well. Kind of like, I believe on the Both record, which is a side project of hers, she worked with Ted Leo, and I think that James Mercer complements a lot better than he does, for example. And I just feel like this more indie, more sort of how would I describe James Mercer? I guess, for lack of a better term, more so kind of like petite male vocal, better suits with Aimee's kind of stronger, more defined female vocal. Uh, if you can't tell, I don't know proper vocal ranges, so good for me. um, yeah, despite that, I feel like this album is just filled with a ton of stunning material, per the usual. With my favorite track being Gamma Ray near the end, which I thought was just super killer. Yeah, it's 4.5 stars. I think it's a really great record, like pretty much all of her other releases from here on out. I just really like her a lot. So number 7, Charmer, 4.5 stars. Expect to hear about it in 2012.
Nice. Yeah, it's probably just a me thing on the Living a Lie thing. You know about me and the Shins. But yeah, I
That's
agree.
unfortunate.
I feel like yeah, definitely the vocal type comment is warranted. She probably Aimee. I think she has an alto voice. I would guess. I don't know for sure, but it's definitely
That
a little bit
would make
um,
sense, yeah.
um, fuller, deeper. Even though she still sounds, you know, uh, plenty fine. It's just it's interesting. So my number 6 going to a Queens of the Summer Hotel, and still have this at 3.5. But I think this is just a really cool project. You know, I'm still not completely sold on the folky style with her quite yet, like you are, but I do think that in this one it's a little bit more interesting because of, you know, kind of incorporating the music hall influences and stuff like that. Not exactly sure what styles it is, but it feels old timey in places, and again, not something that she has completely not been interested in before. I see the album cover and Super Ego Records, and it feels like a fit. And you can definitely tell in the song titles too. There's a song called Robert Lowell and Sylvia Plath, and then there's one called At the Frick Museum. So, you know, the titles and stuff are more dainty in the style, but I think the story on here is about somebody that was like institutionalized, and I think there's kind of the implication that maybe it wasn't really a mental illness, but maybe more how to like people dealt with women in those days. So there's a lot of interesting maybe social analysis in here. It's a little hard to follow, but I still think it's cool, especially on Give Me 15. I was getting like Betty Friedan vibes or something like that, Feminine Mystique, something along those lines. Anyway, beyond that, you know, got to get to the songs. I feel like I almost have the opposite opinion as you on this one, which is interesting. I really like the first strain of tracks. I think Robert Lowell and Sylvia Plath is really pretty. I think At the Fruit Museum is just, I like that piano on it. It's got a nice touch. Even small songs like Checks, I think, are kind of interesting. Transitions. The big singles at the end, or I don't know if they're that big, but the ones that she chose to release as a single, Suicide is Murder, I See You. She's trying to make a statement about and try to connect with people. And I don't know if it completely works for me. It feels a little bit like washing out the complexities, maybe. But I still appreciate the sentiment. They've grown on me since I first heard them. Burn It Out is the third one that was released as a single, and that's maybe my least favorite one. But I love all the little transitional things. The song about being in Mexico is interesting. There's a lot of character here, and I think that just makes it, you want to put it on a little bit more than the previous albums. But at the same time, I'm not quite getting to the point where I find this is just like something I'm going to really go to and grab in the future. So still at 3.5 for Queens of the Summer Hotel.
Okay. Glad that we seem to be talking about relatively similar records right now. Obviously, with a big exception, but it is what it is. I feel like this is where we're going to diverge, though. I think that this is one that you're going to have way higher. At number 6 for me, I have fucking Smilers, which I don't even know how you'd pronounce the censored one, like fucking Smilers. Shout out to Eric, who censors fucking every time he says it in the channel now. Love you. However, for as good as this record is, I feel like there isn't as much to discuss when compared to her other albums. I love Aimee, but in the aughts, she very much followed a template after Bachelor No.2. Mature songs blended with beautiful Baroque instrumentation, combined with amazing piano playing and beautiful vocal work. It's a formula that, for as long as she does it, I'm going to love it, so keep up the great work. She does experiment a bit on here, though, utilizing a bit more synth and added horns to sort of bolster up the overall arrangements. And the greatest example of this for me would be on the track Borrowing Time. Some of the other highlights for me included Freeway, 31 Today, Medicine Wheel, and True Believer. This is a pretty strong 4.5 stars for me. My only issue is kind of similar to, this is a weird album to bring up. It's going to be Technical Ecstasy by Black Sabbath, where they bring in the synth and like these weirder elements, but they don't go far enough with it. Like they're there and they're prominent, but I want you to push it even further, like even higher in your mix and just like overwhelm it and just add on to it and create this chaos where I feel like Aimee's close, but I just wish that it was more predominant with synth and horns all throughout the album as opposed to just being highlighted on more so specific tracks. I don't know. I love the album. It's 4.5 stars. It's a high 4.5. I love it, but I don't know. I just kind of wish that she pushed it a little bit outside of the typical template, despite the songs being excellent. So number 6, fucking Smilers, 4.5 stars.
Well, I both have no idea what you're talking about and kind of understand what you're talking about. So
that's par for the course with me. So
sounds about right. All right. So number 5, I think we're on now. Moving up to 4 stars for Whatever, which is the debut. And this is one that rose a lot for me. I think when I first listened to it. So this is, you already brought it up, but she's clearly been very inspired by Elvis Costello. And I think on this album, you can hear it more than any other place. It's just her whole songwriting approach, as well as melody writing approach, has a clear relationship to him. On a later album, she actually like co-writes a song with him, so they must have had some kind of actual relationship too. But on this one, I think, I'm kind of known. I'm not the biggest Costello fan. That's mostly to do with Costello's voice, less so his writing style. Still, I think when I first heard this album, it took me a bit of time just because this kind of songwriting doesn't come as naturally to me. But because Aimee is a really beautiful singer, and I think these songs are great, they really grew on me, and maybe I'll be able to appreciate Costello a little bit more after this. I think especially on this album, the middle run of songs, Put Me on Top, Stupid Thing, and Say Anything. That is just such a great run of songs. They're all really, really good. And they just have a little bit of what Costello did, and having little melodies in there that kind of defy what you'd expect a nice melody to sound like, but they still intrigue and grow on you. And yeah, I think they're great. The album starts off a little bit rocky. I Should Have Known is more typical sounding, so I don't know if I love it, but 50 Years After the Fair is cool because it has Jim McGinn on guitar, the Byrds, and 4th of July is very pretty slow. So it just, I I it takes a little bit of time to get to those like Costello-y tracks, which I feel are like the soul of the album, but it's not like the first few tracks are bad. It's more just they're a little different. There's some good songs at the end too, although I feel like they do kind of eventually kind of blend a little bit. But I like Jacob Marley's Chain, and I like I Know There's a Word. Like I'm a Stupid, it just takes a little too long to end with like Way Back When. I'm not super into that one. So, but I think there's enough strong stuff on here, and I enjoy enough listening to it as a whole. I think she would develop more of an idiosyncratic musical style later, but I'm already getting that, her typical song style here, and I'm very intrigued with it, and I think it's really good. So 4 stars.
Yeah, nice. I agree with most of what you were saying. It might be interesting to kind of test that and maybe do something on Costello, seeing if doing this maybe would help make you appreciate that. Then
Yeah, well,
again, I might just be forcing you to listen to Costello because I'm really curious. Oh well, brilliant artist, lovely singer. And that's probably the worst part about him, but music's great. Anyways, my number 5, also whatever. On Aimee's first solo outing, she really just knocks it out of the park. Drops a lot of the synths from Till Tuesday, but keeps the jangle pop flavor of Everything's Different now, turning up the electrics a bit and adding in a slight power pop flavor to everything. As well as she seemed a bit more confident within her vocal performances here, with incredible falsettos soaring all across this album. And her quality of songwriting has just continued to grow more and more. Every song on here being at least very strong to me. I love 4th of July, Could Have Been Anyone has a hook that gets stuck in my head endlessly. Put Me on Top is a beautiful song. Stupid Thing is probably her first real sort of heartbreaker, and I think that it's excellent. Say Anything is the one that really caught me off guard this go around, which is excellent. Mr. Harris is delightful. I Know There's a Word you mentioned before, love it. And A Tide is also incredibly good. The only issue I have is the weird kind of intro on I Should Have Known, but past that, it's a very good song. Yeah, it almost sounds like it should have been on like a prog record or something. It's super weird how it opens up. I'm not saying it's prog. I'm just saying it would have made more sense than on this weird
the
like
intro. Okay.
yeah. I'm just saying it would have made more sense than on this weird like jangle pop record from '93. It's kind of out of place. Yeah, I love this album. I think it's pretty excellent front to back. 5 stars. Love Aimee Mann. So number 5, whatever, 5 stars.
Yes. Well, I'm sure there's probably of people watching this video, there may be some skeptics and stuff. So we just have to try to convince them. And I even though my scores are lower than yours, I do think that there's a lot worth checking out here.
For sure.
So I'm kind of on board with you on that. So my number 4 is probably her most acclaimed album. It's Bachelor No.2. And really the reason, so this is 4 stars. And the reason it's not higher it's tricky. It's hard for me to like separate this album from its coexistence with the Magnolia soundtrack, which came out before this album. So there's 3 songs that previously appeared on the Magnolia soundtrack on this album, which are all amazing songs. Deathly, Driving Sideways, and You Do. There's also the track Nothing Is Good Enough, which appeared as an instrumental on Magnolia, although on Spotify it's still the regular version. So they just probably got that wrong, but I like the regular version better. So when I'm listening to Magnolia, I don't mind that. But Magnolia had 5 amazing tracks on it that are not on the standard version of this album, including a cover of Harry Nilsson's One. Momentum and Build That Wall, which follow it on Magnolia, are just insanely good. So cool with the instrumentation, and I was just blown away because I was previously familiar with Save Me and Wise Up, which are also on Magnolia, and some of her biggest songs used in Save Me, I guess, was like an Oscar runner-up or whatever, and Wise Up has been used in different movies, and I like those songs a lot. So I was just amazed at how good Momentum and Build That Wall were. So I think that's the thing, is like I got so into that, and then I went on to this one, and it opens with How Am I Different, and it just feels a little bit more going back to what she was already doing. So even though there's some good new ones here, I think Red Vines, I think I'm familiar with that one. It was maybe a slight hit in the day, not anymore. I don't hear it anywhere anymore, but something in the recess of my memory kind of remembers that song. It's really good. The Fall of the World's Own Optimist has a co-writing credit from Elvis Costello, and that's cool. Satellite doesn't do it much for me. Ghost World is really weird. It's like written from, she does this a few times. She writes from the perspective of like a high school graduate or something, even though she's not that age, and I don't quite understand it, but it's fine. Calling It Quits is cool. That has, I think that was a single or something like that. Susan has more of a grunge rock feel. So there's still a lot of good stuff on here. It Takes All Kinds is a nice song, but there's a kind of a weird lyric in there about her good friend Ron, and it kind of confuses me. But yeah, I just, you know, these Magnolia songs, which I really love, that are just kind of thrown in here, and I would still rather listen to the 9 songs on Magnolia. So it even though I like them in both contexts, I just feel like this one's a little short of that. So that's kind of what leaves it at 4 stars for me. And yeah, I had other stuff to say, but that's coming up short. So
Okay. I will say that album is one of the few times I would actually endorse a deluxe edition because it adds the songs from the Magnolia soundtrack naturally into the track listing. Mind you, it runs like an hour and 7 minutes then. However, it's more Aimee Mann, so that's perfectly okay with me. So I actually found myself I listened to that again, and I don't think it drags at all. So maybe give that a spin if you're interested. If
I
not,
did, and that was what I was going to say. So the only issue I have the extended is I love the order of the tracks on the Magnolia soundtrack. That one
yeah,
two three punch right up front of one to Momentum to Build That Wall is so good, and this one separates Build That Wall and puts it later, and it just doesn't quite work as much. I just Magnolia is it's either 4.5 or 5 for me. I haven't listened to whatever the other songs are on there, which are unrelated, but just those 9 songs I think are just some of her best work.
I think it weirdly has like some Supertramp stuff near the
Yeah,
end, which is
it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. It would be interesting to I guess that's the beauty of Spotify playlists and how you can sequence them however you like now. So it could be
Yeah,
interesting to
yeah.
see what you come up with for that.
This would
So
be a good one to try to do that with. I would probably try to start with Magnolia and build the Bachelor No.2 songs into it rather than the other way around if I were doing it. But
that makes sense.
it's
I
still
mean,
cool that there is a version out there that does integrate the tracks and doesn't just like add them on at the end. So I still appreciate that it exists. But
absolutely, absolutely. Regardless, I mean, hey, 4 stars. Good job. You're wrong about it being 4 stars, but 4 stars nonetheless is great. Speaking
it's a
about
good,
four
it's a really
stars,
good album.
oh yeah,
Like they're
really good is
seriously solid stuff.
we'll get to that one later because I have thoughts on it. But at number 4 for me, an album I'm kind of surprised that you haven't talked about, considering you've talked about Bachelor No.2. I have The Forgotten Arm. Yeah, incredible album, 5 stars, love it. Not gonna add on to that anymore. I feel like she elevates her songwriter even another step across this album from Lost in Space and Bachelor No.2. This adds in a bit more of her rocking side back compared to Lost in Space, which I'd say is kind of her first attempt at sort of more of a sort of standard acoustic record, obviously still having some points with electrics in there. But for the most part, that's her first real stripped back, more sort of intimate record, I would say. But the songs here are tackled with the level of maturity and tact that you would expect from Aimee. Dear John's an incredible opener. I love Goodbye Caroline. Going Through the Motions is great. She Really Wants You, as well as I Can't Help You Anymore. Just excellent. And the song Beautiful, from a strictly lyrical standpoint, might be my favorite that she ever wrote. I think that lyrically speaking, that song is just brilliant. And it's one of the best closures within her entire catalog. Just not a dull moment across here. I love her arrangements. I think that what she's able to piece together is just absolutely brilliant. It's 5 stars for me. I can't recommend it enough. And it's so crazy. I love that album. It might not even be at like my top 5 of 2005. That year is absolutely absurd to me. I have like 6 5 stars in that year alone. So love, love, love it. Forgotten Arm.
Yeah, very nice. That is my number 3. I've got it here. It's a very pretty one. They kind of use it's like a book But each song is a chapter. There you go. You got it too. Very great. So this is it's kind of a story as an album. So it's a concept album about these two lovers that meet at a fair, and then a lot of it deals with one of their issues with alcoholism. And the story is definitely hard to follow, and unfortunately I was kind of hoping that the CD would have some more details, but unfortunately it does not. It just has the lyrics. That said, it does at least have some pictures, so maybe it helps me even figure out which of the two characters is singing the song. But it's not really the point, I'm sure. These are still a great set of songs that really flow together well. That do kind of have an arc to them, and they fit really well together. Dear John really is a great opener. It feels like the theater curtains opening. It really has that effect. King of the Jailhouse is really cool. It has a little bit more of that like indie folky sound to it, almost December's-like or something along those lines. Goodbye Caroline kind of moves back to her more pop sensibilities, and then especially Going Through the Motions feels very Costello, but it fits very well into the track list. And then I Can't Get My Head Around It, so beautiful. Just the whole song is just an earworm. Love it. And it just keeps going on. I mean, I could talk about every one of these songs. I think they're all pretty good. The only real problem with this album is just it is as flat of a sound as like can be. Like everything just sounds so normal sounding for lack of a better term. So if you just kind of put this on in the car or whatever, it'll just sound like any other album and kind of float into the background. And I think this album feels a little polarizing with some people based on what I've been able to find about it, where some people I think just kind of see it as a snooze fest. But I can see where it's coming from. I think that's why I temper my enthusiasm a tiny bit, because it is just a very generic sound. But I think the songs all do speak for themselves when you're paying attention and focusing on them. And then furthermore, I think they interrelate into a really, really great story and great album, even regardless of what the story is about. I think the album closes really brilliantly with I Was Thinking I Could Clean Up for Christmas being really heartwarming. And then Beautiful is just, exactly what you said. It could not end the story or the album better. Like it's just completely gorgeous and feels exactly from the right place. So yeah, I'm very into this, and I'm very much struggling on my rating on it. I'm sticking at a strong 4 for now. It does have 4.5 potential, but it's I'll have to see how it shakes up in the year. But yeah, it's really, really cool find.
Yeah, that's fair. And I will admit, you are absolutely correct about the production. Very standard, very generic, very plain. But I think it's perfect because I think it lets the arrangements really soar. It allows her vocals to really shine, and really just more than anything allow really just all the instruments to come at you and really just envelop, which I don't know, maybe I'm just one to love the blandness of life, but I think that it really just allows everything to showcase itself as eloquently as it could. Now, number 3, this was bad, young man. This was a tragedy that you did. And number 3 is Mental Illness. Definitely her late career treasure and her highlight. While she'd been working with indie folk and kind of acoustic stylings all throughout her career, this is her most sort of direct folk record. In many ways, I view it akin to something like a Joni Mitchell album. It has a very gorgeous instrumentation with some of Aimee's absolute finest vocal work and always superb lyricism. Songs such as Goose Snow Cone, Roller Coasters, Patient Zero, and Simple Fix are all just among her finest material. And I feel like this is just the album that it strips her back the most. It's not trying to be anything special. It's not trying to be anything crazy. Even from a production department, it's not really overdoing it. It's very subdued. It's very calm and really relaxed in its style. It's just, for the most part, Aimee with an acoustic guitar jamming out some of these incredibly gorgeously written songs and brilliantly performed ones. Obviously, I like Aimee a little bit. She is my 3rd favorite singer ever. I think that she is truly brilliant. And I feel like on here you're getting some of her best performances, which is crazy for an artist that's at this point been operating since at the earliest, like 1980, some of her earliest projects. And it's insane that to me she's able to keep putting out such intense levels of quality that I continue to find myself falling more and more in love with. Obviously, you don't quite agree to it, but yeah, this is an easy 5 stars for me. And as much as I love my 3, 4, and 5, my top two I love like 10 times more. They are, as bluntly as I can put it, both probably top 10 albums for me of all time. I just think that these top two are pretty much unparalleled in music for me. So, number 3, Mental Illness, 5 stars.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree that your top two are about 10 times better than Mental Illness. Just kidding.
Out of my
No,
goddamn
I agree with what
sanity.
you're saying. I gotta try not to incite you too much on this
That's
episode,
okay.
right? All right, so we're at the top two now, and yeah, number two is my biggest surprise of the listen through. It's fucking Smilers, and I'm going to light 4.5 for this one. I think it's an astonishing album. This is my favorite album of hers lyrically. I think bar none. I think it's really indicative of her songwriting style. And the music, I think, and the instrumentation is my second favorite of hers after Lost in Space, or, unless you're counting Magnolia, that may be third. But yeah, you most of her stuff can be very dry, a little bland. So I like it when she does make the effort to liven up the arrangements of some of the songs. And you get that here. You mentioned Borrowed Time having the horns. That's a very good example. But just to go through it a little bit, Freeway is a really fun opening. And I just, again, some of her lyrics, they'll give you all the speed you want if you can take the blackmail. Very interesting perspective on that. Looking for Nothing. It's talking about going on the Ferris wheel and getting high, but she doesn't like it. It makes her feel like a cog in the loading zone. I get that. Phoenix is a really heartfelt goodbye. There's a lot of diversity of songs on this album, and I'm one of the people that I like when it switches up throughout the course of an album. So that's a big plus for me on this one. It's Over has some amazing lyrics. Everything changes up, everything shifts and falls unless you care about it. Like, you can be released from the whole burden, but the care is the big thing. Every day is a holiday, the day you live without it. Luck is a thing you make, not just another hustle. So, it reads like inspirational quotes or whatever, but the way she integrates them into the song is much better than me just reading them out of context. Really beautiful one with some great kind of like Baroque arrangements. 31 Today is a cool one. Another one where I don't think she was 31 when she made this, so kind of interesting she chose to write about it. Yes, a little bit older. Medicine Wheel is a great arc. Black marker on cardboard, a little drawing of medicine wheel, everything that's good you steal. This one just made me realize I could just like kind of stare at the lyrics page and just constantly be excited. And I think she integrates them into really lovely melodies, and everything just sounds so beautiful. Columbus Avenue is a one that maybe could fit in Lost in Space a little bit. Good tribute to failed dreams. And then Little Tornado might be one of my favorites on here because it has those whimsical vibes, and this like whimsical Aimee Mann, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's so good. She has like wisps, like a whistler on it, and these like humming backing vocals. So when she wants to do like very interesting music, she can. And this is a great track that's an example of that. And Valentine's is like a fun ending, and I like it. So I do think there's a few songs I'm not quite as into, but overall there's enough here that I really, really like to get it to that 4.5 level. And yeah, it kind of falls in the middle of a bunch of albums, so I think a lot of people might miss it, but I'm very happy to have heard it.
Yeah, even I kind of missed out on that one. I had it at 4 stars my first listen through. Obviously, it's up to 4.5, borderline 5 if I were to go back to it. So it is what it is. I I fully respect you having it higher. The only thing that terrifies me is you not getting to 5, which is very plausible. Is what it is. You could be better, especially knowing what you gave 5 stars to last week, but it's fine. Number 2 for me.
No regrets on that.
I heavily regret that, so it's okay. And number two for me is going to be Bachelor No.2. Bit of a travesty having this. What do you have it at? Number four, number five?
Four, yeah, number four.
Yeah, crazy. But anyways, yeah, this is a perfect album. It's an easy five, but even more so, it's a 10 out of 10 for me, which I have like three of those ever. No, I have more than that, but you get what I mean. And there's absolutely nothing I would change about this record, except I would listen to the deluxe version because it's even more of this album. It's where Aimee sort of stops trying to rock out a bit more. Her style changes to that more kind of intimate, folky chamber pop style. It blends in chamber pop, traditional indie rock, and folk music in a really brilliant way. Her voice is stunning, and once again, the songwriting is being elevated to an even stronger level across here. Songs such as How Am I Different, Nothing Is Good Enough, Ren Vines, as you mentioned, the collaboration with End of the World's Own Optimist with Costello, as well as Deathly, are pretty much just perfection, in my opinion. Truly blissful front to back to my ears. I can't quite stress enough just how much I love the album. It's the step forward and pushing direction that Aimee needed. And yeah, I have it at 5 brilliant stars for Bachelor No.2, The Last Remains of the Dodo Bird. However, number one, literally up until a week ago, was my favorite album of all time. So, poor girl.
The bad week to do it. It's too bad.
Yeah, no, we really should have done this sooner. Oh well.
Well, I'm
Still, at the very least, it's guaranteed top five. So it's fine. And we
I mean, I think when
agree.
I first met you, it was also number two of all time.
It
Probably the
was.
number one has changed, but
Yes, it has.
so
The number one then went down to like, I think number 75 or something.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
like, yeah, peer
750.
pressure.
I didn't mean to peer pressure you. It's just sometimes you just.
No, that's fine.
Anyway, so we technically we have a shared number one. If Lost in Space, I'm sure you've got that somewhere. Really, this is one of my favorite CD things I've ever seen. It's got these like amazing comics in it, which are really cool, and then beautiful illustrations of every single one of the songs. Really helps you get into the album and sink into the mood while reading the lyrics. And yeah, why is this number one? This one has the most cohesive mood to it. I feel like from the first to the last song, that it's called Lost in Space, and it has a very kind of reflective tone that unites all the songs together. The other big reason why it's number one for me is I think it's her most interesting album from terms of the musical arrangements. So she worked with producer Michael Lockwood after kind of going through a bunch of them, I think. But the credits for instruments that appear on this album are just crazy. You've got auto harp, zither, dobro, baritone guitar, harmonium, space loop fun machine, celeste, and then marxophone, which I'm going to talk about later. Just really enhance the album sound. It still has a very regular sound, if that makes any sense. So if again I put this on in the car driving with my girlfriend, and she literally said nothing about it at the end because it just kind of blends in, and it has a kind of a little bit of a sleepy character too, so it's easy to kind of drift off to it. So it's not a showy album, but it does work very hard to create the atmospheres it creates. Opening Humpty Dumpty is a really good one, but it's not my favorite on the album. But Hyatt on Sunday 51 really kickstarts it. That one has the dobro on it, which is just a really cool sound, and a really kind of hypnotic chorus. Won't you be my heroine, or let me be your heroine. That's it. Can kind of listen to that one and drift off. Lost in Space also has just all these songs, just the melodies are just really, really, really strong. This Is How It Goes. The chorus just soars on that one, and the verses are just gentle. Guys Like Me has a very interesting perspective, where she's singing from the guy's perspective, and that makes otherwise I would say it's probably one of the weaker ones, but still she kind of saves it with her interesting lyrics. Pavlov's Bell is just a great kind of road trip song, kind of in the vein of America, or by Simon Garfunkel, or Hannah Hunt by Vampire Weekend. Just I don't know. These are all very different kinds of songs, but I just feel like it really stacks up with the best in that category. And the chorus is just filled with I think there's lots of strings on this one, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not, but it's just very full. Strings do appear on Invisible Ink, and It's Not, which helped to kind of round out the sound. The Moth is maybe my favorite on the album. This is the whimsical song that Little Tornadoes I felt like was kind of harkening back to, not quite as well. But The Moth is just a really haunting song, and it contrasts, I think, like a synth sound with this marxophone, which has this really percussive it's just unlike anything you hear on most albums, but it really, really enhances the mood of the song, and it's a great like late album highlight. So yeah, I think it's a low 5 stars. This started as a 4.5 when I first heard it, but it's just been growing for me over and over, and I really think it competes for album of the year in the year this was released. I think it's 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Just really haunting, intoxicating. You keep going back to it again and again. And I think Fucking Smile is a little stronger, maybe on the lyrics, but she obviously they're still masterful lyrics. I don't know if she ever wrote a bad lyric. And yeah, I just think the instrumentation and the way that these songs connect enhances it. So
Yeah, it was pretty solid. It's all right. My number one as well, Lost in Space. Yeah, this is borderline perfection. It's at the very least in my top 3 of any albums ever. The only things that really even come close to questioning it at this point are Lucidakis' Historian and Let It Be by The Replacements. But yeah, I feel like this is the album, and Aimee as a whole, it just connects with me personally on an emotional standpoint more so than any other album ever. Aimee sounds brilliant. The songs are beautifully written. The arrangements are even further of a step up from Bachelor No.2, growing even more full, as you've mentioned. The amount of instruments that the producers and she brought in here are kind of just goofy with how many they are, but they're perfect, so I don't complain. And yeah, I feel like this is just her most well thought of record. It's incredibly intricate, it's incredibly plotted out, and despite some honestly kind of dated production choices across here, I think they meld into the sound just brilliantly. Her way with a melody is just unrivaled to me, and the choruses across this album will get stuck in my head again and again. As you mentioned, there's almost a hypnotic quality to them, where I just find myself getting, truthfully, for lack of a better term, lost in space, but I'm just add in the thing, me, that I can't do. But yeah, it's just truly brilliant front to back. The Moth, I think, is one of her best points of storytelling. Like you said, it's just a brilliant track. High on Sunday 51. Nope, it's not the name of the song. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Absolutely
yeah.
lovely. Pavlov's Bell is really the most rocking the album ever gets, and I love that sort of, because you don't get a ton on this record. There's like a distorted guitar that comes in just every time during the chorus, and it's so cool. I love it. There's just, I could sit here for like 5 minutes alone, just rambling about the track listing, because I think more than anything else, it's a perfectly sequenced record. Everything segues into itself brilliantly. Well, but yeah, I absolutely adore it. It's my favorite artist's finest work, possibly to me the finest work in music. So, number one, Lost in Space, 5 brilliant stars, and more so 10 out of 10. And yeah, I fully agree. 2002, it's a loaded year. You got stuff like Wilco, you got Coldplay. This is a goofy one, but I love that debut Maroon 5 record. There's tons of great stuff in 2002, but
Not as good as those other two, in my
what
opinion.
you're telling me, Songs About Jane doesn't compare with Yankee Hotel Foxtrot?
I love it for you. Let's put it that
No, you
way.
don't.
I
But
do.
yeah,
I think it's good. I think it's underrated, but it's not best of the year. So,
well, no, it wouldn't even make the top 5. 2002 is crazy. But I mean, Yoshimi
But yeah,
Dao's the
I'd have
Pink
to think about
Robots.
it. I hate to say it, but yeah, yeah, versus Coldplay and Wilco, those are the two that would compete the most. But
Uh,
I think this one has it for me, and I wish I didn't love it so much, so that we could provide a contrasting opinion here, because obviously there are a lot of people that have heard Aimee Mann and don't seem to
yep.
get the same amount of stuff out of it. But at least on this one, I fully agree with you. Sorry about mental illness, but
No, that's fine.
can't win them all. But
That being said, Aimee Mann, kind of like her. She's
how
kind
does
of
it
cool.
feel to have covered one of your favorite artists?
Fucking weird. I'm used to covering stuff that I hate, like fucking White Stripes and B-52s and bullshit. It feels weird to do an artist again that I like genuinely love a lot. The last one that I think that I did that was an artist that I truly like absolutely adored is uh, Cover Your Ears. It's the Shins, which I recorded last week. But yeah, no, Aimee Mann shits all over the Shins though. So as I've mentioned, basically my favorite artist ever. And yeah, I can't say enough good things. I'm glad that you said one or two kind words, nothing below 3.5. I mean, I know you're an easier grader, but I will take it. I will take it.
Yeah, it's hard to like hate on her. I just feel like, again, like
Absolutely.
every single song, there's very careful attention to process of the song, and I just respect that. They're listening to all of these at once. It is a little bit
It's taxing.
samey, but and taxing for sure. But I think as I've kind of did those first listens and they kind of reflect on it, I think they just grow. So
Absolutely. She's an artist that if you really, I feel like she's one of those that if you do feel her and connect with her songwriting, there's very few that do that type of music better, I would say. But I'm slightly biased. So that being said,
there are a number of great artists that she fits in.
sure. With that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed this. If you accept me gushing, I might do other artists in the future that I love. That being said, though, I hope you all have a great one. Bye.